Don't you think it's about time you quit playing this ridiculous game?
Xenosaga Episode II is an interesting video game.
Looks like I misjudged.
A lot of people do not like this one, and I can't blame them. One of the biggest sticking points is the battle system, but I do get the feeling that a lot of new players have a hard time understanding it, which leads to more frustration and in turn makes them hate the game more. This game's tutorials are not very helpful at all, and the game itself is pretty difficult at times, so you're in trouble if you don't know what you're doing. I don't expect that this will automatically make you enjoy Xenosaga II and think it's a great game. It's still pretty rough. I just want to clear things up so the process of actually seeing it through to the end is a bit more manageable. Let's start with on-foot combat. You perform normal tech attacks using the top 3 face buttons, square, triangle, and circle. Pressing the X button will open up the battle menu. Here you have access to a variety of options. These are stock, ether, item, double, move, escape, change, and in the case of KOS-MOS only, special. Some of these are actually on a different page of sorts, so you'll have to press left or right on the D-pad to view those. Ether is how you use ether skills, which are basically this game's version of spells from other RPGs. It's just like Xenosaga I. Item allows you to use items, not much to say there. Move allows you to move your character to a different part of the battle area. You can use this to move behind the enemy, which will allow you to attack them from the back. Back attacks have increased damage, crit rate, and can't be avoided, so this can be very helpful when you want to do a lot of damage. It will briefly leave you vulnerable to back attacks though. Change allows you to swap out party members in the middle of a battle. This can be very useful if a character is running low on health or isn't a good fit for the current combat situation, though certain debuffs will prevent you from switching a character out. I'll get to what those other options do eventually. First, I'll cover regular attacks. Using any combination of the square and triangle buttons will allow you to perform weaker 2-hit combo attacks, while using the circle buttons will allow you to perform a stronger 1-hit attack. If you have any bars of stock under the character's portrait, you can spend those to perform additional circle attacks. So how exactly do you get stock? The main way is to simply use the stock command in the battle menu. By doing this, the active character will gain 1 bar of stock and defend until it's their turn again. If you don't want to do that, there is also a random chance that a character will get a bar of stock when they inflict break on the enemy. It's just not very consistent. I'll explain break in a bit, so don't worry too much about that just yet. You can have up to 3 bars of stock, which will allow you to perform up to 4 attacks in 1 turn. Getting that much stock might take a little while though. Returning from Xenosaga I is the boost ability, and it should be easy to figure out if you remember how that game worked. As you perform attacks, you fill up this boost meter in the bottom right corner of the screen. You'll gain 1 boost charge when the meter fills up, with a maximum of 3. Just like Episode I, there's a turn order display in the bottom right corner of the screen, which shows the immediate order in which allies and enemies will attack. For any party member that isn't already visible in this display, you can spend 1 boost charge to cut in front of the line, so to speak. You do this by holding R1 or R2 and pressing one of the face buttons, which each correspond to a different party member. Unlike in Episode I, boost is shared across the entire party, so you can freely spend your boost charges on any active members, regardless of how much they've actually filled up the meter themselves. Just remember to use them wisely. Boost is a very powerful tool that you want to be able to access whenever you need it. Boost is useful in a number of different ways. If an enemy is about to use a dangerous attack, you can boost in front of them to prepare or take them out before it happens. If a party member is running low on health and you need an emergency heal, you can boost to make that happen. Those are some general use cases, but there are 2 very specific and important situations where boost is key. The first is in regards to the event slot. You may remember this from Episode I, and it's very similar here. There's this icon next to the boost meter that changes each turn and cycles between 4 different phases. These are critical, boost, skill, and random in that order. Each phase has different effects on the battle when active. The critical phase simply increases the critical hit rate for attacks on that turn. Use your biggest, most powerful attacks here for the best damage. Also avoid letting the enemy attack during the crit phase. You don't want to be on the receiving end of a big attack. The boost phase significantly increases the rate at which the boost meter fills up when you attack. If you spend your stocks on a longer attack string, you can potentially get multiple boost charges in one turn. The skill slot will increase the amount of skill points gained from defeating an enemy on that turn. Your points will be multiplied by 2, 4, or even 10 if you're lucky enough. Finally, there's the random slot. In this phase, the game will randomly pick between 4 options. Blank does absolutely nothing. There are no bonuses at all when this is active. Ether will increase ether power for those who act on this turn. This affects both healing skills and damage dealing skills. Worth noting is the fact that Xion and Momo's regular attacks are ether based, so those will do significantly more damage on this turn. TC, or turn cancel, will cancel out the turn of anyone that takes damage during this phase, ally or enemy. They'll be removed from the turn order indicator upon being attacked. RV, or Revenge, will fill up the boost meter of anyone that takes damage during that phase. So if an enemy lands an attack on you, you'll get some boost, but if you land an attack on an enemy, they'll get some boost. To recap, crit phase increases crit rate, boost phase increases boost gains from attacking, skill phase increases skill point rewards if you defeat an enemy, and the random phase will randomly increase ether power, cancel a character's turn when attacked, grant boost to a character when attacked, or do nothing. That's all there is to the event slot mechanic. Now it's time for combos. Oh boy, get ready for this one. I'll start by explaining what I like to call boost chains. This isn't an official mechanic, but it's a playstyle that you'll have to get used to if you want to have success with combos. A boost chain would be a series of turns that are all activated by boosting a character. Each turn you boost somebody and keep that going as long as possible so the enemy doesn't have a chance to act. As such, the end of a boost chain would be a turn where you don't boost another party member and the turn order proceeds as normal. This is key because time effectively stops with boosted turns. I have no idea if I explained that well enough, so hopefully it makes sense going forward. Now onto the break mechanic. Most enemies have a break zone, which is a specific string of attacks that you have to perform in order to break the enemy. These attacks are indicated by letters. A is for high attacks, B is for middle attacks, and C is for low attacks. Square attacks always count as B, and triangle attacks always count as C. Circle attacks have different letters depending on the situation. Most of the time they count as B attacks, but sometimes, such as when using a ranged attack on a flying enemy, it will count as A instead. And on some enemies, they will count as C. It's very weird, probably just treat them like B attacks most of the time. Some enemies have a break zone that's only 2 letters long, so you can easily break them in one turn. However, most bosses and many late game enemies will have longer strings. Progress on a break will reset after one normal turn, but will carry over to a boost turn. As such, you can start a boost chain to do the rest of those attacks and properly break the enemy. Maybe that didn't make much sense, so here's an example. This hypothetical enemy has a break zone of BCCB. I start the string with Junior, who performs a square triangle attack. Before his turn is over, I boost to Ziggy, who performs a triangle square attack. Now the enemy is broken. So, what now? What's the point of break? Well, for starters, enemies take 50% more damage when broken. More importantly, you can now topple or launch them. Or I guess they're called down and air in this game. I'll probably use both interchangeably because I'm just more used to the Xenoblade terms. Ziggy and Chaos can inflict down on a broken enemy, while KOS-MOS and Jin can inflict air on a broken enemy. When in either of these two states, all damage done to that enemy will be doubled. Both down and air are largely the same as each other, but there is one key difference. A launched enemy floats in the air. Crazy, I know. In all seriousness, this means that Ziggy and Chaos, who can only use grounded attacks, can't actually reach a launched enemy. As such, I would recommend not inflicting air while either of them are in the active party. Break, down, and air will only last during a boost chain. At the next normal turn, the enemy will recover from break and down completely, and you'll have to start the entire process from the beginning if you would like to take advantage of those combo statuses. In order to prevent a combo from ending like this early, I definitely suggest deciding on who you want to boost ahead of time instead of doing it at the last second during the attack animations. I personally still have a bad habit of boosting last minute, so I get it if you may have a hard time adjusting to that, but it's always risky. Be sure to give yourself as much time as possible. Air is a bit different from down. After a boost chain ends and a normal turn begins, the enemy will fall back to the ground and end up in a downed state. If it's an enemy turn, they'll just get back up immediately, but they'll actually stay there if it's a player turn. You can use this opportunity to attack and start a new boost chain to capitalize on the topple. That was probably very hard to follow. It's only going to get worse from here, so feel free to rewind if necessary. The final piece of the big combo puzzle is elemental combos. To reiterate, all of your attacks deal double damage on a toppled or launched enemy. However, you can do even bigger damage by starting an elemental combo. This is done by performing multiple elemental attacks in a row. Damage will increase further and further as elemental combos continue, so things can get pretty crazy. It's very important to note, however, that you have to keep using attacks of the same element. If you use an attack with a different element, or no elemental attribute at all, the combo will end and your damage will go back down. Be careful to avoid this. Some characters have specific elements attributed to their attacks by default. All of Ziggy's attacks are fire-based, and all of Chaos's attacks are aura-based. Xion is a bit weird. She alternates between thunder-based attacks and beam-based attacks. She's not a very good character when it comes to elemental combos, at least. Normal attacks for each of the other party members, those being Junior, Momo, KOS-MOS, and Jin, aren't elemental at all. However, you can change that with elemental swords. This is a set of 4 ether skills. When used, a sword ether will grant a buff that adds its corresponding element to that character's regular attacks. They come in ice, flame, thunder, and aura varieties. I highly recommend unlocking the sword ethers early and using them throughout the game. Unfortunately, elemental swords only work on characters that don't normally have an elemental attribute. You can't use them to give Ziggy ice attacks or Chaos fire attacks. It also means that you can't patch up Xion's elemental damage problem. If you want to use any of these 3 characters, you should plan accordingly and match elements on your other party members, or accept that you can't do elemental combos as effectively. There's one final thing I have to say about elemental combos. If you attack with an element that the enemy is weak to, you will naturally do even more ridiculous damage. That's about all I have to say there. The commonly accepted method of doing big funny damage is as follows. Stock up before breaking, so you can do a lot of attacks. Get a lot of boost charges before breaking, so you can keep the boost chain going as long as possible. Ensure that your whole party has the same elemental attributes before breaking. Now break the enemy with the right set of attacks. Start the boost chain here. Launch or topple the enemy, depending on your strategy and your team setup. Unload all of your stocks strategically. Attack a lot. Also keep an eye on the event slot. Crit up is generally a good phase for anybody. Crits can be very powerful, especially when combined with elemental damage. If Momo's turn occurs on the random phase and you manage to get the ether effect, she can deal some crazy damage. The damage is much higher than it would be on the crit slot, but whether or not you're lucky enough to get the ether effect is also important to consider. Gamble responsibly. If you're running low on boost charges, attacking a fair amount on the boost phase is a great idea. Keep the attacks coming until you run out of boost charges, or the enemy simply dies. Now that I've explained the individual mechanics, it would probably be a good idea to show an example of a good combo that will do big funny damage. I'll bring back the hypothetical enemy from earlier. My team is KOS-MOS, Momo, and Chaos, and our enemy is weak to aura. To start, I'll use the stock command to get 3 bars of stock on each of them. I'll also do what I can to max out my boost charges, so I have 3 of them too. Finally, I'll use Aura Sword on both KOS-MOS and Momo, so all 3 of my characters are now doing the same advantageous elemental damage. Now it's time to break the boss. It has a break zone of BCCB, and it's KOS-MOS' turn. I'll start by boosting Chaos and using Square Triangle to attack with KOS-MOS. On Chaos' turn, I'll boost KOS-MOS and do a Triangle Square attack, followed by a Circle attack. This will break the enemy and immediately topple it, start an elemental combo with Aura, and get me at least 1 boost charge. Now on KOS-MOS' turn, I'll boost Momo and do 2 circle attacks. The Aura combo is now up to 3. The event slot is now on the random phase, and I was lucky enough to get the ether boosting effect on Momo's turn. I'll boost KOS-MOS so she can attack on the crit phase and do 4 attacks with Momo. Each one does a lot of damage, and the Aura combo is now up to 7. Now it's KOS-MOS' turn, and I'll boost Chaos again and do 3 attacks. She gets a crit on a few of them, dealing large damage, and the Aura combo is now up to 10. I'm running low on boost charges, so I strategically moved in such a way that Chaos would act on the boost phase. I boost KOS-MOS and have Chaos attack 3 times, netting me 2 more boost charges. The aura combo is now up to 13. I boost Momo in the hopes of getting the ether effect again and attack once with KOS-MOS. The combo continues like that and I get to do a massive amount of damage until I have no boost charges left or the enemy dies, whichever comes first. Hopefully that made enough sense. Again, feel free to rewind as much as necessary if you have a hard time understanding things. Hopefully it will all make sense with more practice. With all of that being said, there is something I want to say about long elemental combos. You do not need to do them all the time. It's simply unnecessary for most fights. For regular enemies, you can skip the elements, and even just 2 bars of stock on a few of your party members might be good enough to make it through. Even for bosses, the whole elemental aspect may not be necessary. In any case, use elemental combos as much as you think is necessary. If you use them very often, and find yourself struggling with all of the waiting and the setup, there is a good chance that you may not need them and you can save yourself the headache. One final thing to note about combos is the fact that not only can you combo enemies, but enemies can combo you. Enemies have a boost meter of their own. Enemies can break you. Enemies can then topple or launch you. Enemies can do elemental combos on you. Enemies can absolutely ruin your life. Some enemy teams in the later dungeons are very good at this. The annoying counter boost mechanic from Episode I is also back and allows enemies to boost out of your combos, though you can prevent them from doing this if they're launched. It's annoying, and I honestly haven't totally figured out the right counterplay in that situation, so don't die. Now that's it for combos. There are 2 more mechanics related to boost that I didn't mention before. One of these is the double attack system. These are big stylish moves that involve the power of 2 different party members, similar to something like the dual attacks from Chrono Trigger or the bros attacks from the Mario and Luigi series. There are a variety of attacks depending on the pairing. They can range from particularly strong single target attacks to big AoE attacks to strong buffs and healing abilities. Some pairings have multiple double attacks while others don't have any. So what's the cost, and how do you actually do these attacks? Well, both characters need a certain amount of stock. It's usually a minimum of 2 stock, some require only 1, others require 3. You'll also need to boost the active character's attack partner, so if it's, say, Xion's turn and I want to use her attack with Jin, I have to boost Jin. Then you select the double option in the battle menu to actually perform the attack. In order to do that though, you'll also have to unlock it first. Depending on the attack, you may do this by completing side quests or finding and using awakening items, which you might find by opening chests, defeating specific enemies, or stealing from bosses. They aren't easy to come by. I did a handful of side quests and completed the game, and I still barely have any attacks unlocked across my whole party. When it comes to their application in battle, double attacks also aren't all that useful. They don't always have elemental attributes and don't do much damage compared to basic attacks in an elemental combo. Considering the large requirements to set up a double attack and the underwhelming and potentially detrimental payoff, I wouldn't recommend using these in a more serious fight. You can totally mess around with them if you want. It's fun to see the attack animations and style on regular enemies. I just wouldn't turn to them for help in a difficult boss fight. The other boost-related mechanic is ether combos. You can actually combine 2 compatible ethers from a pair of characters into one more powerful spell. First, you have to boost another character who has an ether that's compatible with one of the active character's ethers. Then you go to the ether menu, highlight the skill in question, and press triangle. Now you can use the combo version of it. Let's take Medica for example, or Medica II specifically. Momo and Xion both have this skill. It's Momo's turn, so I'll boost Xion and head to the ether menu. I highlight Medica 2 and then press triangle. Now I'm in a new menu with the option Double Medica 2. I select this ether and both Momo and Xion use Medica 2 at the same time, healing the entire party significantly instead of just one party member. The big issue with this mechanic is that it's just hard to know which ethers are compatible with each other. To help with that, I have stolen this chart from the Xeno series wiki that lists every single combo in the game. I'd like to specifically point out the Medica combos, which both heal the entire party, and Pocket Rare. This one is a combination of Analyze and Psycho Pocket. Upon activation, you steal a rare item and you analyze the enemy at the same time. Using this at the beginning of the boss fight is probably a good idea. This is a pretty obscure mechanic in this game. I personally didn't know about it until I saw a random NPC rambling about it in the post-game, and then later did my own research. Hopefully this knowledge is helpful and you can find some good opportunities for ether combos. Now it's time to take a step back from active combat to talk about skills for a bit. Skills come in three main varieties. Passive skills are indicated by this stick figure looking icon and are always active after unlocked. Equipable skills are indicated by this ring icon and have to be equipped in the status tab of the menu in order to be activated. Finally, ether skills are indicated by this water droplet icon, and they're just the ethers that you normally use in battle and the field. All ethers that you unlock are automatically equipped, and there's no limit to how many you can have equipped at a time. Skills are split into levels and classes in the menu. Each skill level has a number of different classes, which each have 4 unlockable skills. Just to be clear, this is not a job system. Every character has access to every single skill in the game, so you can freely build any party member however you want. You press right on the D-pad to open a skill level to see its classes, and then press right on a class to see its skills. You can press D-pad left to back out of any of these menus. In order to unlock a skill, you first have to spend some class points to unlock its assigned class. After that, you can spend skill points to unlock skills in that class. After unlocking all 4 skills in a class, you'll be rewarded with a large amount of additional class points, which you can then use to unlock more classes and more skills. I would usually recommend going for every skill in a class after unlocking it, just so you can have as many options for other classes as possible. Additionally, after mastering a class from a given skill level for the first time, you'll open up the next skill level and all of the classes and skills found there. Some skills are hidden at first. In order to reveal these skills and be able to unlock them, you'll have to first get your hands on their corresponding secret keys. These are often collected by completing quests, finding them in treasure chests, or opening up the red segment doors found throughout the world. They're a little hard to come by. There are some specific skills that I would highly recommend unlocking for as many characters as possible, as soon as possible. First is Memory, which is a passive skill. This one reveals the enemy's break zone on the bottom right corner of the screen after you've discovered what it is. It happens to be one of the earliest and cheapest skills in the game, so it's really a no-brainer to unlock it. I previously mentioned the Elemental Sword Ethers, which allow you to add elemental attributes to regular attacks. Look out for these so you can unlock them on Junior, Momo, KOS-MOS, and Jin at the very least. Analyze is an ether that reveals a bunch of information about the enemy, including if they're weak to physical or ether attacks, what attributes and elements may be more effective on them, and what items you can get from them. Those are things that you definitely want to know quickly, so using this immediately when you fight a new enemy or boss is a good idea. Alternatively, you could just look this info up on the wiki. That's always an option. Psycho Pocket is an ether that allows you to steal items from enemies. Some bosses have unique and potentially very helpful items, so having this around for those encounters would be a good idea. This one is hidden at first, so you'll need to collect its secret key before you can unlock it. You can do that by completing GSC Quest 1 with this woman in the second Miltia City area. Down Dex and Break Sensors are both ethers that decrease enemy accuracy. Down Dex specifically only works on biological and Gnosis enemies, while Break Sensors only works on mechanical enemies. These work fairly consistently, so you'll want to have these around for particularly heavy-hitting bosses if you want to dodge those attacks. Attacker and Ether Spear are very powerful damage buffs. Attacker is specifically for physical attacks, so it's helpful on most characters, while Ether Spear is specifically for ether-based attacks, so it's really only helpful for Xion and Moma. Finally, there's Medica and all of its variants. These are your healing ethers. You obviously want to have them handy in any situation. Besides those, just unlock whatever skills you think you'll want. Debuff blocking skills are nice, there's some other ethers that can be useful, and in general unlocking all of the skills in the class allows you to unlock more classes and skills. Okay, that's just about all there is to on-foot combat, so it's time to move on to the mech combat. During some sections of the game, your party will board the ES, or mechs, which have a pretty different battle system from the regular character combat. It's fairly simple compared to all of the combo shenanigans that you usually have to deal with, but it has a few unique mechanics to get used to. To start, you have 3 options for mechs to take into battle. These are the ES Asher, piloted by Junior, ES Dina, piloted by KOS-MOS, and ES Zebulon, piloted by Momo. The other 4 party members can be assigned as co-pilots for each of these, which will have some gameplay effects. You can only bring 2 mechs into combat, but you can swap in the reserve ES in the middle of a battle if you want to. You have 2 normal attack options, a ranged attack with triangle and a melee attack with square. You also have this EC, or energy charge meter, which is pretty important. This is filled in increments of 25 with each normal attack used, and in increments of 100 when using the stock command. The max EC is 200 by default, but you can increase that to 300 with a specific accessory. This EC resource is spent on special attacks, which are going to be your main source of big damage. 100 level specials are weaker but usable no matter who the co-pilot is, while 200 and usually 300 level specials are stronger combo attacks of sorts that change with the co-pilot. You can see each of these potential combo attacks from the text tab of the menu. Play around with co-pilots for each mech to see which specials you like the most. Some mechanics from on-foot battles, such as boost, work the same in ES combat. However, others don't. You actually can't use items in an ES, and most mechs can't use ethers. The one exception is Momo, who does have access to most of her ether skills in the ES Zebulon. Because of this, it's important to invest in giving Momo a bunch of helpful ether skills, and I'd also recommend leaving Zebulon in the ES party at all times so you don't lose access to them. Unlike on-foot characters, ES units actually have equipment. Mechs have unique accessories that you can equip. You have 3 slots to equip them to, and you can access this equipment menu from the status tab. The last thing I have to explain about mechs is the weird intercept mechanic. When you use the stock command, there's a random chance that you'll intercept an incoming attack and perform a counterattack of your own. Enemies can also intercept you, cancelling out your attacks and hitting you with a powerful move. Apparently, they can also intercept and steal your heals, though I've never seen this happen myself. The chances of an intercept happening are determined by the IA, or intercept attack rate. IA for you or an enemy is increased when landing attacks and greatly increased when landing critical hits, while it's decreased when being on the receiving end of a critical hit. I don't believe you can see your own IA unfortunately, but you can see your enemy's IA. You should keep an eye and ear out for when they use a stock command and their IA is high, and respond by stalking yourself instead of attacking them or healing with ethers. That's about it when it comes to ES combat. We're almost done. I do have a few other things to make note of before closing out this guide. If you've played the game for a bit, you may have noticed something very odd. Unlike most RPGs, there are no shops at all. As it turns out, you can only get items from combat, treasure containers, or occasionally quests. There's also no such thing as currency. There's also no such thing as equipment for your characters on foot. You can't find any stronger weapons, armor, or character accessories, or anything like that. Skills more or less take their place. It's a very weird design decision, but it is what it is. I also wanted to take a bit to talk about side quests. These don't have much to do with combat directly, but I think it's important to keep them in mind. The GSC, or Global Samaritan campaign, is the framework for side quests in Xenosaga II. Throughout the 4 main settlements in the game, you can find NPCs that will have specific requests for you to fulfill. The specific requests and objectives vary a lot between missions. Here are some examples. There's one in Jin's house that's a slightly annoying sliding block puzzle. There's this puzzle in the second Miltia water plant, where you have to walk around slowly and methodically destroy defective sensors. There's this guy who wants to go on a date with somebody that doesn't actually like him. There's this very annoying one, I don't like that one. There's one where you have to pay off Captain Matthew's debts, don't bother with this one, it's very grindy. In some cases, you can actually fail quests. As for what those rewards are, they also vary greatly, and they can be pretty good. Sometimes they're just consumable items, but sometimes you'll unlock a new double attack. Other times you'll get secret keys allowing you to unlock more skills. Sometimes you'll find decoders to open up those red doors you find throughout the world, and so on and so forth. Quests can be very boring or annoying at times. However, if you want to take a break from the main story to do some quests, you will be rewarded, often with helpful combat abilities. If you aren't interested in doing this though, you don't have to. Before completing the game, I think I did maybe 1 quest, and I was fine for that entire playthrough. If you do want to do a bunch of quests, I will have to warn you of one thing. You will be completely locked out from visiting these town areas for the rest of Disc 1 after stuff goes down at the U.M.N control center. Before heading there, it may be a good idea to get some of your questing over with. I believe you can head back to the towns throughout most of Disc 2, so you should be fine there. Finally, before I finish this guide, I'd like to cover each of the 7 party members and their roles in combat. You can more or less build each of them however you like with skills, but they each have different stats and combat capabilities that you might want to know about. Junior is the main character of this particular game. Yes, it's not Xion. Junior has access to both square and triangle attacks, so he's good at breaking enemies. His circle attack is ranged, so it can hit airborne enemies. Junior does not have any access to combo reactions, or in other words, he can't down or air enemies. All of Junior's attacks are physical, so damage is calculated based on his strength stat. They also have the Pierce attribute, which some enemies may be weak to. He has no elemental attribute. As such, he can wield just about any one of the elements using the sword ethers. He's a bit of a jack-of-all-trades type character with pretty well-rounded stats, though he's very good at dealing physical damage with his high strength. Next is Xion, who is not the main character of this particular game for some reason. Xion only has access to circle attacks, no square or triangle attacks, so she's not great when it comes to breaking enemies. They are ranged, so again they can hit enemies in the air. She also has no combo reactions. Xion's normal attacks are ether type, so they're calculated by her ether attack stat. As I mentioned before, they alternate between having thunder and beam elemental attributes. Using an elemental sword ether on her does nothing, so don't bother. Xion's biggest strengths are her healing capabilities and her ether-based damage, thanks to her high ether attack stat and high EP. However, she has lower vitality and HP, so she's a bit fragile. She's excellent at dealing damage against mechanical enemies thanks to her ether attacks and elemental attributes, but she's unreliable on elemental combos because of how her elements switch during her attack strings. Momo is similar to Xion in a number of ways. She only has access to circle attacks, which are ranged and deal ether damage. She also has no combo reactions. Her attacks have the Pierce attribute and have no elemental attributes. She's the only character that can use ethers in a mech. Momo's playstyle is centered around dealing heavy damage with her ether attack stat, which is the highest among the party members. She also has the highest EP stat, making her a good spellcaster, the highest agility stat, letting her act more quickly than other party members, and the highest evasion stat, so she will dodge attacks more often than the others. They really gave her everything. She does have very low HP and vitality, so she won't last long if she can't dodge a lot of physical attacks. Momo is considered by most to be the best party member in this game due to all of her strengths combined, her ether attack in particular. I would recommend playing around with your team though. You don't have to use her, but she's very, very good. Now back to more normal characters. KOS-MOS can use triangle and square attacks. Just so I don't have to mention it later, Jin, Ziggy, and Chaos also have these kinds of attacks. It's really only Xion and Momo who don't. KOS-MOS' circle attacks are melee, but she is able to attack enemies in the air because she's cool like that. She also has the ability to inflict air on a broken enemy. All of her attacks are physical type, and none of them have elemental attributes. Most of her attacks have the strike attribute, though some are slash type. KOS-MOS also has exclusive access to a handful of special attacks. These are used by storing up a certain amount of stock and then activating them from the special tab of the command menu. They're similar to the double attacks, but they only involve KOS-MOS. She has very high strength and vitality, so she's an effective physical damage dealer and a good tank. However, she has a very low agility stat, the lowest in the game tied with Ziggy. She'll often lag behind the other characters in the turn order for that reason. Jin's moveset is similar to KOS-MOS. His circle attacks are melee, and he can also jump up to hit enemies in the air. All of his attacks are physical with the slash attribute. They do no elemental damage. He can inflict air on a broken enemy. Stats-wise, Jin is in a similar boat to Junior. He has a high strength, but fairly average stats beyond that. He excels most as a physical attacker, and he has the stats to be a decent tank, but he's not particularly outstanding in other areas. However, he's the cool katana sword fighter guy, so clearly he's the best no matter what, and he will never leave my team. Next up is Ziggy. His circle attacks are melee. Unfortunately, he's ground locked. He's not able to attack enemies in the air. I would recommend leaving him out of the active party if you want to launch enemies. However, he can inflict down. All of his attacks are physical and have the strike attribute. He also deals fire damage with his attack. Just like with Xion, don't bother using sword ethers on him. They won't do anything. Ziggy is defined by his high strength, HP, and vitality stats. He's the strongest physical attacker and the strongest tank. However, he shares KOS-MOS' low agility problem. He also has low ether defense and EP stats. He's not going to be able to use a lot of ethers, and he's probably going to struggle against ether attacks. Since he can't attack enemies in the air, I'd recommend against using him in the same party as KOS-MOS or Jin. Finally, there's Chaos, who has a very similar moveset to Ziggy. He uses melee attacks and can't attack airborne enemies. He can inflict down on a broken enemy. All of his attacks are physical, have the strike attribute, and deal elemental damage. Chaos's elemental attribute is Aura. Chaos is a little weird in this game. He has a very high ether attack, but very average strength, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense considering how he only has physical attacks. He's also ground locked like Ziggy, so he can't hit launched or flying enemies. He does have decent vitality and HP, but most of his other stats are average. His biggest strength is probably his EP, which is the second highest in the game, only behind Momo. Because of that, he's best as a utility party member, so give him a lot of ethers if you want to use him. TLDR, Junior's all around solid and a very good physical attacker. Shion and Momo aren't very good at breaking because they don't have a lot of attacks. Shion has thunder or beam attacks, is bad in elemental combos, but she's a great healer and an excellent machine killer. Momo is the best character in the game because she has insane stats and does very high ether damage. KOS-MOS and Jin can launch and attack enemies in the air. KOS-MOS is slow but very powerful and tanky. Jin is more well-rounded and also physically strong. Ziggy and Chaos can topple but can't attack enemies in the air. Ziggy is slow and weak to ether damage, but very powerful and very tanky, and he does fire damage. Chaos is best as a support mage, and he does aura damage. Alright, that's everything I felt was necessary to cover when it comes to combat in Xenosaga Episode II.
Jenseits von Gut und Böse.
Hopefully this guide was at least a little helpful and makes the game less frustrating to play. I can't say for certain if you'll end up enjoying the game, but I hope you'll still be able to make it through just fine.